Hey, 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 it's the boy, it's Jack C, and I'm tired. I'm a bit stuck in a corner here, and I've been listening to the new Tyler the Creator album a lot recently. So much so that I'm going to share my thoughts on and sort of review of Tyler the Creator's Scum Fuck Flower Boy. Now I'm really sort of impressed by the way Tyler's sort of reinvented himself in this album, but at the same time he hasn't strayed too far away from his sort of distinct sound. I feel like a couple of tracks on here could definitely fit into some of his earlier discography, and vice versa with some of his older songs sounding more like the stuff on this new project. But yeah, I'll go sort of track by track here and tell you my thoughts and opinions on each of them. Tyler kicks off this project with the track Forward, which acts as sort of a thematic waypoint for the rest of the album. Even in the first line, how many cars can I buy until I run out of drive? The rhetorical questions here and this sort of introspective lyrics pave the way for some of the themes on the rest of the album. I really like how Tyler's clever use of wordplay and double meanings, along with his almost dizzying use of repetition and links, allows us to feel like we're inside his head in a way. And at the end of the track, when Tyler's finished spilling his thoughts out in a way, it leads us on these fading vocals that get drowned out by this sort of high-pitched electronic noise. Then this noise takes us into this nice pretty little piano intro to Where This Flower Blooms. I like how these traditional piano sounds get layered in with these more subtle synth sounds into Frank Ocean's hook. And one thing I will sort of praise on this album is that all the features seem to fit really nicely on here. One nice moment here for me comes in verse 2 where the instrumental almost completely cuts out as Tyler's talking about being himself and how he's perceived. Then we get another one of many catchy bridges and hooks on this thing, which takes us into Tyler's final verse, where he seems to be almost humbly and subtly bragging to himself, until finally he stops, sighs, and almost gives up in a way. I feel like this was put in here with a more implicit meaning, as if Tyler's trying to appeal to the masses more, but it's just not working for him. He doesn't see the point, so he gives up. The ending of Where This Flower Blooms transitions seamlessly into the next track sometimes. There are a lot of examples of this on this record where Tyler sort of bleeds the outro of one track into the intro of the next, which gives it a more sort of flowing feel. Like each of these tracks is a piece of a puzzle in a way. But this track sometimes starts again with another piano intro with a couple of sweet little vocal lines here. They just sort of lay the foundation for Tyler's flow that sits atop them quite nicely as he talks about falling in love with this sort of anonymous figure. I do like the outro of this song as it sort of slowly leads us off with these horns and these keyboard sounds. These keyboard sounds are carried over into track 5, Who Dat Boy, but in a way that's sort of twisted and dark. I love how the introduction on this thing really builds up suspense with these piercing strings and these abstract alien noises. For nearly a whole minute this tension is building until it's finally just blown into the dust by this first hook with Tyler's bassy vocals and the almost distorted instrumentation underneath. And despite the sort of dark, grimy aesthetic of this track, Tyler still comes across with these sort of clever, funny bars. The line "fresh to death like he got dressed in the coffin" genuinely made me laugh when I first heard it. And then we get another really fitting feature here from A$AP Rocky. I feel like his voice and float contrast Tyler's in a way that really does add to the track. Despite the fact that the track's really loud and hard-hitting, Tyler still takes time to, give his thoughts and opinions on some of these lines here. One moment is where Tyler expresses that he doesn't really want to rap anymore, he wants to focus more on his other business ventures. These are opinions that he's held for a long time, as he said this before in that Larry King interview he did. Which now that I think about it, he's probably wishing he never took, as everyone's sort of taking what he said on that interview as gospel, regarding sexuality and such. A fun little Easter egg I found on this one is at the end of Who Dat Boy, when the engine is revving and he seems to be driving away, he hits a pothole, track number 6. And this is quite a fitting metaphor here, as potholes sort of embodies some of his more general struggles. This seems like sort of a more pure rap track while still fitting this laid-back style that Tyler's got on this record. Then we get his feature from Jaden Smith, which I didn't mind, it's definitely one of his better vocal performances. I don't have too much to say about this track, nothing really stood out to me that much, but then again I don't really have any complaints. I wouldn't say it's the best track on here, but it's listenable, I can enjoy it. And then we go into one of the more sleepy sort of R&B style tracks on here in Garden Shed, at least in the first half. I really like how these sort of soothing guitar chords really complement the voices of Tyler and Estelle on here. This track here sort of reminds me of the opening song from Childish Gambino's latest album, Me and Your Mama, which definitely isn't a bad thing. I don't know why, I just kind of get that vibe from it. He seems to be opening up more here about his sexuality, but more in general just being yourself again. Then we go into one of my personal favourite tracks, Boredom, which features Rex Orange County. He features a few times on here, and I'm really liking his contribution on all of these tracks he appears on here. I know I keep going on about it, but there's a really nice transition from Garden Shed to Boredom here. It really feels like each time these tracks connect, we've got no real breathing room in between. But because most of it's obviously not as hard-hitting as some of Tyler's older stuff, we don't really need that time in between each track. One of my favourite moments on the entire album here comes on this second hook early on in the track, where it's been sort of building up with these hooks and bridges, and then we get this beat coming in with this almost elevator music like piano in the background. And then again, Tyler cuts through with boredom, 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 boredom. Because Tyler's sort of complaining on most of the tracks on these albums, it really did have a danger of coming across as whiny and annoying, but because they're sort of really smooth and catchy, they just come across as nice little diary entries almost. Or like he's just rattling his thoughts off to us as if we were an old friend. I feel like this is encapsulated most on this track, where he's sort of not taking himself too seriously, talking about eating dry cereal and such. I feel like we can just sit back, listen and relate to him in a way. But once Boredom has ended, we get this nice sort of upbeat accordion sounding tune which starts off Ain't Got Time. This catchy little melody sort of once again interrupted by Tyler's aggressive sort of punchy hook here. I really like the production and mixing on this whole album, it's really highlighted here. If you're listening really closely with headphones, you can sort of hear the subtleties and it really makes it about 10 times better, I'd say. Both in Ain't Got Time and Boredom, we hear this voice coming in one ear and out the other saying tick-tock. In Boredom, this is sort of fun and light-hearted, it reflects the time going by, but here in Ain't Got Time it's sort of dark, aggressive and threatening. This is one example of these sort of vocal motifs that Tyler sort of throws around the album, it really brings it together. But again, this track sounds really nice, it's got some really crafty rhymes and I like his flow throughout it. It does end kind of abruptly, not in a bad way, but we go into 911/Mr. Lonely here. On the first part, 911, I do like the sort of fun throwback sound on the instrumental. I also like Tyler's crafty sort of almost internal rhyme scheme here. And then we go into another Frank Ocean hook, which again is put here with real purpose. His voice is a really nice fitting addition to this song here. However, on the end of 911 and the start of Mr. Lonely, I feel like this album sort of takes a turn for the worst in a way. For me at least, this moment sort of signals Tyler crossing the line a little bit on the whole whiny thing. This track's lyrically too sort of hyperbolic and explicit. And then we get this moment which for me could have been a one-liner really, but he keeps going on into this extended metaphor about him never having had a pet as a child being the reason why he's so lonely today. I just think it's a shame because the vocal performance on here and the structure is really good, but just the content of the lyrics really lets it down for me. Again, I wouldn't say it's a bad song as such, it's listenable, but I just wouldn't say it's one of the standout points on the album here. But then from Mr. Lonely, we bring it back a little bit with this shorter sort of interlude track, Dropping Seeds. When I saw the Lil Wayne feature, I really didn't expect to like this song, but his sort of high-pitched voice, again, complements the instrumental on this one. It's a shorter one, so I can't say as much as I have about some of the other songs on here, but it's definitely a solid track, and I can see why it was included. And then we go into one of the more thought-provoking songs on here, November, as Tyler really seems like he's giving us another look into his psyche on this one. He starts with this metaphor of November being this sort of more fulfilling, happy experience perhaps than the one he's feeling now. Just the best time of his life really. Sort of transitions into the second of 3 acts, if you will, on this song. The track sort of breaks down into people stating their own Novembers. All of this talk of sort of happiness and joy breaks the song down into a monotonous repetition of take me back, take me back. Another one of my favourite moments on the album is where this voice keeps building up until Tyler finally breaks through with I ain't doing fine. I love how his vocal performance here really shows his distress and his raw emotions. And the third act with the flow of Tyler's rapping is sort of a more pure hip hop track now. I feel like this section is a set up to the next track, especially with the sort of outro speech here. Tyler's leaving a voicemail, presumably to this anonymous love interest, which comes to life in the form of the penultimate track, Glitter. This voicemail here seems to be Tyler again confessing his love, but also speaking about general self-improvement and positivity. I'm not sure if it is Tyler singing on this one, but either way I'm really impressed with the vocal performance on the hook here. I also really like the change in tone about halfway through, where Tyler's voice becomes pitch shifted and distorted. After Tyler's finished talking about love, happiness, positivity, we find out that no one's hearing him because the voicemail didn't go through. I feel like this has another implicit meaning. The phrase, we didn't get your message and you weren't speaking, could show how the media is sort of blocking him out due to what he said in the past. And this is ironic because with Tyler's potential coming out, he's trying to give a message of being who you are and loving who you love, but he's being rejected and excluded by those he's trying to make amends with, simply due to their preconceived judgments of him. But despite his struggles, we can sort of forget about it with this nice, bubbly, flowery instrumental track. The lack of lyrics here sort of speaks volumes in a way, because it just leaves us with this last, nice, poignant message. Enjoy right now, today. Again, I've got no complaints about this track. I think it's a nice, fitting, meaningful end to the album here. Overall, I really did enjoy this album. It feels cohesive, sort of creative, and that Tyler really did have a vision as he was crafting this thing. It really does seem like Tyler took his time on this record and that it was created with thought and care. I love how even though it's not as sort of narrative as other rap albums, it really does tell a story, one of self-improvement. It's a real journey. And finally, I appreciate how genuine and honest and open Tyler's being on this record. And yeah, it just sounds great. I'm definitely going to be coming back to this one, definitely one of my favourite albums in recent memory, so I'll give it an 8.5, 8.75. If you made it this far into the video, I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Thank you ever so much for watching.